Welcome back to another episode of the Kick and Cover podcast. Today we have Coach Pham with us today. As I told him before we started, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because I don't want to butcher it. I don't want to offend my guests. But he is the OC at Kansas Wesleyan. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal today. How are you doing today, Coach Mansfield?
As I told you before we came on, I've had better mornings to at least deal with academics, but it's gotten better as they go on. I'm gonna go watch our varsity boys play basketball here once we're done, and cheer them on and wish them nothing but the best. So, but today, I mean, Coach, we're gonna talk a little shield punt. But before we get there, do you want to kind of give coaches kind of a background to how you got at Kansas Wesleyan?
Absolutely. Well, my full name is Mike Famigletti. It's my full name. So that's why we just go by Coach Fam, because you probably met 1,000 Coach Mikes in this industry and this awesome profession we have. And Coach Fam, my actually last name really means big family of all things. So good, Italian conversion chart right there. That's pretty nice. But this is my first year at Kansas Wesleyan. We just finished up 7 games this fall. We're going to have 4 more this spring. Hopefully some playoff push too, but we're all excited for that, and it's been a lot of fun. It was a great transition. I came here from Northern State, where I spent 2 years there. My first year, I was blessed to work with our head coach, Myers Hendrickson, when he was the offensive coordinator, and I was our running back specialist, associate recruiting coordinator. I was a young guy. I mean, I was 25. Whatever position and opportunities they gave me, I was going to do it and give all I could. And then before that, I was at Wisconsin Lutheran College as our special teams coach and running backs coach. And then I got my start at the University of North Dakota just as that intern spot, where you're just grinding. You're getting to learn what being a college football coach is. And I got to fortunately play Division I football as a long snapper. So I'm one of the few specialists in the coaching profession now. And I absolutely love it. There is not a better thing. And the great influence I had from my coaches at Western Michigan and Western Illinois to add more confusion with people, 2 Westerns, just absolutely reaffirmed why I want to get in this, and I love it. So that's my background, and I love special teams. I even have a football year. I still get some snaps in all the time. Probably maybe not as good as what they were before, but I say, hey, I may no longer be at my best, but what I got left me is my best ever. So
No, that's awesome, Coach. And I used to when I was at Westland High School as a safeties coach, our O line coach um, played. Was a 4-year long snapper at Ohio Dominican, and he was. I mean, you talk about somebody who loves long snapping. It was just deep into it, like that man. And I was talking to Nick Bolliard, who was on episode 1 here, because he was at ODU at the same time, and we just joked around about Tyler and stuff. So. But yeah, I mean Tyler was a great long snap. Like long snappers are an interesting breed, and um, usually good guys, usually very intense, high energy guys. And so I mean it's good to have you on, Coach. And um, also, Coach did a video for us back in what was it, April, May?
it was right around that time where the whole world shut down for the first time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whenever that was on some motions and a couple other things offensively for us. So that'll probably be in the bio as well. Make sure you check that out if you're interested in some of that. But let's get into shield punting day, because I mean we messaged a little bit back and forth. You wanted to talk shield punting, and we're currently a shield punt team. So anytime we can kind of learn more about it, the better. I mean I'll kind of let you take it off from there, Coach, and we'll kind of just chit chat from there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think what I'm going to talk about today isn't just all shield punt. I feel some of the fundamentals and basic beliefs of your punt unit can apply to that, double up guard look that a lot of high schools run, even to the pro style punt. There's a lot of similar connections that we all have to do. And all levels of football from Pee Wee on up are unified by the punt. And it's both a nightmare and a beautiful thing in pure football at all levels. But the way being an offensive guy, I actually view punt as an offensive unit, just made up a lot of defensive players is the way I view the punt unit. And of course, the field position is such a huge, valuable part that at no matter what level, if you can take something from here, and I hope everyone does, to improve their punt unit, that would just help their overall program, offense and defensive thing. So I have my background right here, but field position. So this is why I love punt. And the biggest thing, if we had an offensive play that gained 30 to 45 yards plus every single time we would run it, we'd call that every single time we step on the field, and we would call it every single play of the game. I mean, that's the biggest thing about the punt. And you punt, there's a lot of different schemes people do. People will start motioning. They'll go 4x2. They'll take guys out of the shield. They'll put an athlete in. They'll direct snap it to someone. But ultimately, just like every play, it really just comes down to fundamentals, technique, and how well are they coached, and just go make a play, go tackle somebody, block somebody. And punting's the weird formation and play of a game where you're going to have to block somebody, then go make a tackle, go run, go avoid. You're honestly a hybrid linebacker, receiver, fullback every single time on a punt unit. So when I talk about punt, I always have a diagram where, hey, we got our back on red zone. The colors are kind of reversed. But when you're backed up, you're kind of in your own, to quote Tom Cruise, you're in your own danger zone a little bit, where you're only going to score a very few amount of times. But then the closer and closer you creep up to the other team's end zone, your chances of walking away from that drive with points are astronomically higher. So if you can minimize someone's punt team and you can maximize yours, you're going to constantly get it back in their own corner of the field to start off every drive. And that just gives a huge advantage to your defense, makes it easier on your offense because they get to start around the 50 or better because of their lack of execution or your execution. So I always like to bring that up. So as I said, it's pure football. The punt team, I call it an offensive play because you're in control of the ball, right? You can do a fake. You have to be, conscious of where it is. If you're the punt return unit, you got to have the eyes on all the eligibles. You got to make sure you don't accidentally touch the ball if you're not the returner, and that you field the ball cleanly. And then you got to make sure that, hey, you're holding them up, right? If you're in the punt return unit. So punt team, go execute, right? You got to block. You got to cover. You got to tackle. And as we call it football, there's not too many pieces that use the foot, but punt's the one that there's not too many calls to get rid of. People are saying field goals don't need to happen. Kickoff doesn't need to happen. Well, punt needs to. There's the strategy. There's the element. There's a surprise to every punt. There's that decision they always talk about. Andy Reid on 4th and 2. If it's right there at the 40, the other team's 40, are they going to punt or are they going to say, well, we got Pat Mahomes, we're going to go for it? I mean, we make that same decision too. We love to run the ball, but, there's a bigger advantage sometimes of paying the other team deep and helping out the defense, So it's best play, fundamentals over scheme, and then location, and punt solves your team's problems, right? Yeah. You're giving it to the other team, but you're controlling how they get it. So I say, punt unit's like a house. How do you want to build your punt unit? Who is the most vital person to have a punt unit, right? That's what I ask and what I believe. And people might think I'm a little biased, but the most vital person to have a good punt unit is your long snapper.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure every high school coach, and even a lot of college coaches, just have nightmares about that guy getting hurt, or if that guy even exists in your program. I mean, we're blessed here. I feel we have the best long snapper in all of NAIA football. I mean, I would have sometimes been scared to compete against that guy if he went to my college. He was a talented snapper, and he makes it incredibly easy for everybody else on the field because they know our punt snap's going to be great. The execution will be perfect for the punter, and we don't have to protect them for 7 seconds or for whatever it is, or be, making the sign of the cross as coaches every time our punt unit steps on the field, And punters appreciate it too.
I ripped my freshman long snappers so hard this year after one game because he almost got our freshman punter murdered during a freshman game. Like, son, you can't just lob that ball up there. You were going to get this kid murdered. And that's the one thing I've tried to heavily focus on since I've been here is developing long snappers and the quality of them. I mean, before COVID hit, I was getting them about once a week in the weight room in the morning before school. They'd get their lift in, and then we do some drills and some warm-ups for long snapper specific stuff. So yeah. I agree 100%. It's the most important player on this. Them and the punter are the two most important players on this.
And a lot of times not everybody has like a Chris Saylor or Coles or whatever 8 million kicking world camp type guy for their punter. A lot of schools say, hey, your linebacker's the strongest guy on your team. We're going to have him kick the crap out of a ball, you know. But that snapper could be your center, could be anybody. Shoot, I've had teams where it's your backup QB, you know.
Ours is our backup QB coach. He
Right.
started as a short snapper 2 years in a row. He'll be a junior next year. He's a sophomore right now, and he's first full year as long snapper.
Yeah.
He's also it was our backup quarterback this year. Was our third string the year before.
Well, tell him to keep working his snapping this summer because maybe he'll get more recruiting attention to be a good long snapper than to be a backup QB. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's why I tell all of them like it's an easy. I'm not saying easy way to get to college, but I mean, college is always looking for good long snappers. I mean, hell, there was a period where Hawaii would hold 2 scholarship long snappers on their roster back under like June Jones, and when they switched to whoever was after June, they'd always have like a junior and like a freshman.
Yeah. We want a guy to be ready and learn and see what it's like in a game. And occasionally, there's no like restrictions there. Hey, you can play as many guys as you want at those teams. So if you got a home game, let your backup snapper get the job done, when you're up by 40 days. So the next year when he is the starter, he's got it. And trust me, I went into college as a 5'9", 5'10", there was quotations, 185-pound player. And I played as a true freshman in the first game. So, I mean, it can happen if you're that guy. I mean, you just have to have the skill and that confidence and your trust in your technique. And I feel there's a lot of bad coaching, though, that does go along with snappers, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's one of the toughest things is, guys say, like, well, he's done it. You just throw it through your legs. Well, yeah, but how do we get them to do it to their best,
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you watch golfers and everything else, and I compare specialists to them because nobody in their right mind knows what a kicker is who's not a kicker or a specialist or a football guy, but they know what golf is, and they know that technique and that confidence. There's a connection there. And snapping, it's the same thing, same thing for kicking, They want to start balanced. They want to start relaxed. They want to have their arms ready more like they're going to throw. The biggest issue I see with a lot of snappers, and a lot of people, I'm going to tell you to try this out at home, right, is they'll wrap their wrist around like they're pressing it to their forearm. When you do that, that locks your elbow. So I look at it, I'm a biochemistry major, I'm a nerd, but, you biomechanically, if you over twinge one part of your body, it locks up another. How many people throw, with their arm completely and elbow completely locked out? That's a very tough thing to do. And as far as body balance and bringing their core through, those are some things I see a lot of snappers making that mistake. So, having the back flat, having the core ready to go, and then making it a full body movement, and then always finishing balanced. And then as far as the hands, they want to be looking honestly like a perfect throw, where that hand wrist flicks down, it's just flipping out because you're upside down. It's, one of those underratedly hard coach positions that is a lot of times instructed very poorly. So I would love to.
That every time I the past 2 years I try to figure out who has prior experience actually snapping. That's my one of my prerequisites. If I can, otherwise I'll do it. Because I've spent time studying it. But luckily we hired somebody who snapped in high school and was pretty knowledgeable about it this year that could take over as the year went on.
It's good. And ultimately that affects whatever punt unit you can have. I mean, if that guy gets hurt, I'd recommend, a lot of teams even to look at like a quick kick and everything like that, or some extra protection for your punter, whether it's numbers or leverage to keep them up. And then punters always feel like I give them the short end of the stick, but, they got to have someone get them the ball first. If you're constantly playing like Golden Glove level shortstop as a punter, you're probably not going to be the greatest punter, no matter, how good of an actual punter you are. Like punting on air, that's easy. But when you got a rush of the all-conference DN coming at you and, balls are flying, you never know where, it's very tough to be good. But the keys for a punter, I always say, you got to start balanced and relaxed. A lot of guys are just like sitting back there like all tense and ready to go, hands right forward. It's like, no, be relaxed, man. And then ultimately, you want to have a really good punter, have them work on catching a ball comfortably every single time. The better hands a punter has, I feel the much more effective they're going to be in their actual kicking, you know. Because if they're constantly letting the ball get through their hands and they're catching it here, then they're having to reset it while they're stepping. But if they're always getting it right out in front, right, or nice and easy, and they're comfortable and calm with a football, those steps are going to be a lot better timed. The ball is going to be placed in the right line down their foot. And to make it easier for punters, I say, hey, you want to see your line, walk your line, drop it down the line, and then swing your line, right? It's a controlled explosion, and a lot of guys like to do, 3-4 steps. Well, the more steps you do, the more of a run you're going to get, and the more error you can have. If you just do a controlled explosion 2 steps where you just go kick foot, plant foot, burst through, you're set.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, eyes. A very underrated thing with punters is that keeping the eyes and shoulders all tucked towards the ground, that stops the core and the hips from coming up and through. So those little keys of, hey, just like how in golf, we follow everything through with our body to that ball.
Yeah.
Same thing with punting. You want to follow those hips, legs, and body through to let that extension get all the way through. You don't tell a quarterback to stop his arm here. You tell him to let it go all the way through.
I agree 100%. And I think the main thing I saw in that was probably the most important is that relaxed. I think this is true for kickers in general, like not just punters, field goal kickers, kickoff kickers, like his mental stability. And that's probably a bad term wording, but I really don't care. But just being like somebody that doesn't get too hyper, but at the same time doesn't get too stressed and flustered. Like a kicker can't be topsy turvy. Like I've talked to many people a lot smarter than me about that, and they're just like, yeah. And what's his face? The God, I think it's the Chiefs special teams coordinator. I want to say he talked about that like in an article or something about because he just goes like undrafted kicker after undrafted kicker to excel. It's like yeah, he's like I prefer the undrafted kicker. They're driven to succeed because they were undrafted, and they don't feel like they're tend to be stress free or they don't buckle to the pressure of being a draft pick. It just like there's not that mental. They have a better mental edge. Is pretty much how he worded it.
Right, and I think honestly one of the best people to talk about it, and people know I have a huge love of Pat McAfee.
Oh,
but
I love
like,
Pat McAfee.
He said it best is like those robot kickers who are the guys who've always been a kicker their whole life, not an athlete and kicker, are kind of limited in a way that they only know a mechanical one way of how to do things.
Yeah.
But when like the going gets tough, those guys who know how to be an athlete can rise through those occasions and have that grit. And, being a kicker is a tough thing because you never know. You might only play one play in a whole game, and it's at the 59th minute, 59th second of that game, but it's the biggest play of that game,
Oh, yeah.
And you just got to be ready, and you can play with emotion, but you can't be emotional,
That's a much better way to put it than I just tried to state it, Coach. That's much better. See?
Because trust me, I sometimes was an emotional player, and I think the kicking that I threw my helmet out one time, that didn't love it. So.
As long as you're not like swinging at it like certain NFL players who end up getting like almost breaking their hand and the net falling on them, then you're fine.
Yeah.
But minor details.
But I don't know, I'm a different person now than that. But yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of big things that go on with specialists as far as that, hey, just being ready and that, if your body's relaxed, it's a lot easier for you mentally to like relax,
Yeah.
If you're tensed up and you're constant like this, there's a lot of activity going through your head, but I don't know. And then I've always thought like, if you don't have a snapper, you got to come up with solutions, or if you don't have a punter, like going into my second year at Wisconsin, our punter had to hang up for a year because he had a knee injury that happened when he was weightlifting, meniscus tear.
Ooh.
And so we didn't have a punter. We had to train backup QBs to be like our quick kick guys, or we went full rugby because we're like, well, they're also athletic. They could run the ball and just go, They don't take that into account. And we actually stole a couple possessions. The average could have been better, but I think we didn't have a single punt block. So those guys rose to the occasion, and they had that athlete ability. And, you know, the other thing about our rugby is it's a good advantage to have, too, if you don't just always have that same uniform block point every time in your team. You know, if that team says, hey, we're going to block it, but sometimes it's going to be over here to our left or to our right or right down the middle, we can't perfectly scheme up that punt, you know?
Yeah, no, I get you 100%, and I think that's where the good coaches are able to adapt year from year. I talk about that all the time and with any coach and any system and any podcast I'm on, whether it be one of my own or somebody else's. It's just like if you're not adapting your scheme to your kids, then you have some serious problems. I'm not saying you have to like, oh, we were inside zone team this year, and next year we'll be a double tight, double wing team. Like, no, I'm saying is, okay, we're good at inside zone this year, but we're not necessarily got the lineman this year, so we might run X, Y, and Z that's already in our system more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right. Yeah. Or just limit down the run plays that you have, you know?
Yeah.
And especially in a year like this year where you week to week, day by day, you don't know who your guys are.
Oh, sometimes. Yeah. Like, and then that goes back to our conversation before. Like, I mean, that's why if I'm at college or NFL team, like I'm not trying something necessarily too overly fancy because you might not have half your punt team that week, and you might have people you just signed a couple days ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree, and that's really the way it always is. I mean, you know, week to week, every level of football, because as we talk about football, it's a collision sport. You know, we talk a ton about weight room and everything, but injuries and nicks and stuff happen where someone's not going to be at that ability to do that this week. You know?
Yeah, I get you 100%. So, all right, let's move on to the dreaded part that the punter fears is the protection.
Now, protection is number one, and I feel the protection actually starts again with your specialist. You know, we talk about how quick a snap can be. Well, your punter's also got to be responsible enough and trained enough that they can get that ball off in time. They know they're not supposed to sit back there, eat snacks, then get the ball off, or that they can fuss around with it like it's on air. No, I got to punt it, and as I'm catching this thing, I got to be taking my steps and go. That's why those extra good hands help, and it makes it a ton easier, right? Asking every guy in your punt unit to protect for 3 seconds is absolutely ridiculous. The main goal is to slow down any sort of rush and then get your body between your guy and wherever the ball is going to be. It doesn't matter if you're on the backside, if you're pro style, if you're shield style, or if you're any sort of punt look. That person who's protecting has to be between the defender or the guy on the punt rush and the ball.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're a frontline guy, you got to step and get to that inside shoulder. If you're in the shield, right, you got to step, keep your hat inside of their hat, you know? And luckily for us, we have stripes right down the middle of our helmet. So we can always see on film, hey, we're inside or we're outside, you know? That's where it all really just comes down to technique. And it's not just the line, you know? It's everybody is up there. And no matter what scheme you run for punt, the protection is number one. Because if you don't get that punt off, we don't need to cover. Like, if the punt's blocked 15 yards back, we should really just be taking a knee or just spotting the ball back there for the other team rather than risking that touchdown every time. And that whole operation, you know, there's got to always be that practice that those guys get every day, which is why I'm a huge fan of having an actual specialist as your snapper and your punter rather than a guy who works it part-time, you know? Yeah. And then whatever scheme you do, it's a count or a zone, the fundamentals are still the same, you know? Just like we're essentially all just running inside zone. We're working to reach on the backside and we're working to kick out on that front side, you know, no matter who it is. Or it's pass protection, you know? Keep the pocket clean for your QB.
Yeah. I mean, it's usually is zone protection or some sort of simple count system, which essentially just becomes pass pro. I mean, in the end, kind of like you started off that with is, I mean, your operation time so vastly. That again, it goes back to the snapper and the kicker. I mean, I talk to our snappers and punters all the time about operation time. And I'm timing them and I'm talking to them. It's like, this is what the expectation. Otherwise, there's a chance you're going to get whacked in the face, and I'm not going to feel bad for either one of you. I'm just going to rip both of you.
Right. And shoot, I mean, that's like the biggest thing is that's why those guys, I've always thought, hey, every single day, regardless of if it's a punt day or, you're not working as a team that day, those guys got to get those reps, either start practice or,
Yeah.
and especially get it with your one-on-one guys, you always, just like how you always want your number one receiver getting timing with your quarterback. You want your punter getting timing with your best snapper, right? And I think going back to our earlier conversation, why the NFL has to do the pro style, because they need that extra protection. If you got, I don't know, J.J. Watt and T.J. Watt rushing a punt, you probably got to protect for that guy for a little longer than your average bear, or all the different, 40-man staffs to scheme it up. But, yeah, and everything that I always talk about, it comes down to eyes, hands, feet, always being able to identify who we're blocking, keeping the scheme simple, as we talk those simple count ones. I mean, if you can have guys who can count to like 5, you can really do any punt scheme in America, And if at college you got guys who can't count to 5, well, I don't know how eligible your football team's going to be, but, it'll be good. Hey, you'll probably have a very poor punt unit and special teams unit. And then feet, always getting those steps through them or having that strong base where when you do deliver that blow, it stops any momentum.
Yeah.
A lot of players, when they first line up and you say, hey, get in a 2-point stance for me that's square, their feet going to be all the way outside their shoulders, right? Having that proper 6-inch powerful step is such a huge difference, right? And then the hands, having that strong punch on that inside part of their body, right, or wherever it needs to be, and then being able to shed them, right? That's why we always got to keep having the feet moving. Where I always say get through them rather than to them, right?
Yeah.
Right. Or else you're just taking every blow, like Rocky. We want to be more like Rocky 2 when he beats Apollo.
There you go.
Yeah. And then, of course, our back line, that's really where it comes down to having that, hey, hat inside, in between our guy and the punter. Right, and that's really where those extra count goes. And these are our solution makers. If anybody gets through or they have, an odd look that we're going against, these guys fix it. They're right there. So even if you have a one-man shield, well, your whole scheme is done to make it okay for him, And there's also the whole getting everybody wide enough that, like, if there's someone off the edge, they can't get it. That's part of the operation, because the most you can ever have protecting is 10, right?
Yeah.
You use your snapper, but from personal experience, snappers sometimes aren't the best blockers.
No, and sometimes if you ask them to start blocking, their snap's going to get messed up. Some kids just can't handle especially the high school level where we are, we're already trying to get them just a snap. It's very hard unless you have one of those rare freak ones to get them to do both. It's just, from my experience, I could just be a bad coach, but from my experience, that's kind of where that is. And going back to your backline stuff here, whether it's a 3-man, 1-man, 2-man, I think one of those kids has to be one of your smarter kids, because that's also the kid's going to make your adjustments a lot of times in your system. Is one of your guys. Like, we were shield punt this year, past 2 years, and I kind of made that mistake last year, where this year I got one of my smarter kids on that shield who could make my calls, make my adjustments a lot better than prior years.
Yeah. And one of the things I've done to kind of eliminate that is I've just put everything right in us and a coach, where I just say, hey, it's this call. Okay, well, he knows if it's this call, I always have the 5th guy, or I always have the 4th guy, right? And if I count from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I have them, or just making it easy and doing all that. And I don't think it always has to be a lineman, but that does help if they have blocking experience.
Yeah.
I always like those tweener guys that are always such a premium, those thicker fullback tight end.
Yeah, tight end H-back kids, yeah.
Yeah. I always think those are probably the best ones to have there, just because they do work blocking, they're good with their hands, but then they actually cover, they can.
Yeah, that's a big difference right there, and I had some issues with that this year. So it's like, yeah, if I get more of that tight end, H-back, inside linebacker hybrid kid, or maybe like a strong safety, or like the thicker ones that they're not your track kids, that they're not gonna. You might not be having them carry people down the field in coverage, but I mean, yeah, I'm with you there, Coach.
I know at Wisconsin Lutheran, I think we had a 190-pound D end as one of our shield guys one time, but he was just a tough son of a gun, and he was going to smack whoever came through. I'm just like, all right, well, he might get pushed back a little bit, but I know he's going to smack it. And to be honest, whatever level, you're going to have some sort of guy who's that tough as nails dude that you just trust. Yeah. And that's going back to being that smart guy, you know?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So, and then, of course, they got to maintain that. I very rarely say hold your block, because that's like, okay, hold, right?
Yeah.
Those 10-yarders, you know? And then the thing I've always thought on coverage is we can't always say, hey, this guy's always going to be our first guy out every single time. That's like teaching your quarterback. This guy is literally, no matter what the defense does, will be open when he runs the same exact route, you know?
Yeah.
That tells the rest of your team, okay, I can kind of take my time in coverage if he's a little slow. No, we're doing this whole thing to go control the ball. We don't just kick it and the play's done, whistle's blown, everybody just go back to the sideline. You know, it's why we've been doing all these things that we talked about for the last like 25 minutes about why we got to have a good snapper, why we got to protect, because we got to hustle our butt down there, go tackle the best athlete on their team potentially, and even in a perfect scenario, get the ball for us, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's where, like, and part of that is determined based off what return scheme they have on too, on who they're pressing and blocking, at what direction they're blocking them, whether they're going for the block instead of a return. Like that factors on who gets a better release and who might get jammed a little bit better. I mean, a couple episodes ago, by the time this post, Joel Judge talked about some drills to kind of know how to fit based off where you are in relation to the returner and who gets down there first. It's who actually gets down there first. It will vary depending on, like, I remember my first year here, I think it was like my guard, right tackle just got murdered like every game on the line of scrimmage. I mean, I didn't really have anybody else, but I mean, he just got like, they would just put their hands on him and his ass would go backwards instead of forwards. So, I mean, sometimes that kid ain't going to be the first one down the field. So, you just got to be aware of that.
Right. And, I mean, that's exactly it. So, I always taught priority coverage. So, hey, if you're the first guy down, you go to the ball. So, part of that coverage is the punter always has to put it where we call it. You know, if we always say, hey, we're punting to the right on this one when we make this call, you better punt it to the right. And if he's punting to the left, he better be the loudest human being on the face of the planet to say that, hey, it's going left, 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 or right, 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 and always to reaffirm, because we've all seen it. There's always the one guy running around looking up and then gets cold clocked. Well, the secret that the coach I worked for at Northern said is every punt in the history of the game has come down. There's not a single punt that's just sitting up there, unless maybe, I don't know, there's a couple of NFL punters I think might have a couple balls still hanging up there, but every punt in the history of football has come down. Yeah. So go be ahead, key that returner, key where he's going, understand where our ball is trying to go in coverage, and fly down the field, right? Get off the guy who's holding you up and fly down the field. You know? And then we base on release orders. So, hey, the first guy's going right there to the ball, right? I always teach the ball first, because if that returner ends up picking it up or it ends up bouncing off of him, we have it. The second guy fits 5 yards outside of him, so he's kind of the fit, right? All right, and then we have a flow player who's always that third guy. There's going to be a natural level where he's going to fit either between those two to make the play, or he's got to work outside to knife that guy down if he tries to break contain. You know?
Yeah.
So that guy's kind of got to have some football smarts. So that's why I always like, if you can have one of your best linebackers be one of your guards, I always recommend it, because he's always going to be either the first guy down to hawk somebody, or he will be the fit or the flow. He's going to be right there and be in a perfect advantage. Or if you just have a great tackler, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then, of course, the coffin punts, I always say go return first in the goal line, because as we say, hey, you can't predict exactly where it's going down, but you know it's going to fall down, right? And we've known so many times, I mean, rule might be broken at higher levels, but so many returners have said, I can't catch it, can't go back behind the 10, and then he muffs it, and then no one's there to pick up the ball.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. If you can take care of that, then by all means, then keep the ball out of the end zone, you know. So, I mean, just little diagrams there, you know, whoever the first guy out is, doesn't matter. they're going, to the returner. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're basing it off him. And it's just like, all of our routes and everything adjust based on where you are on the field. If you're too far to the sideline, you're going to have to be a little tighter on your split, or it's not going to be the same distance wise, and then some blocking and everything. But we got a couple clips, so you can see our snapper. We pointed out, have a nice little diagram here. Make sure the punter's always ready, good snap. I mean, it just makes it real nice and easy. And I always love it when this happens. Just the first guy down, just bam, smacks him right there. Good tackle.
Yep. And they do a good job there, what I call umbrellaing. I can't even enunciate there, where everybody's at a good point. Everybody got him surrounded well. There's not a good vantage point for him to break coverage.
Right. Yeah. He keeps going down. I think one of the most overtaught things is that, like, stop and shimmy. Yeah. Right? It's like, no, we want to keep closing space to the ball. The only time you should ever stop is if you legally cannot go closer to him.
Yeah.
And then, as you see, none of our shield guys this past year, I mean, we had 2 fullbacks and our middle linebacker. I mean, we had the other thing that I think can help anyone's punt unit is putting your better football players on there. Yes, special teams is a great way to break in some of your younger guys. But on your punt unit, which is the most important unit you have, you want guys who you trust and can execute. Why do you put on your C squad on such an important play? That's like saying, hey, it's Hail Mary. Let's only put in our backup wide receivers and let's have them go make the play, It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And then I found this to be a really good example of how the advantages to fit and flow and everything, and our guys point out. But yeah, our punter had a very good year. He was our starting punter for 3 seasons here at Kansas Wesleyan and did a great job. But we just see that really good, how the scheme and technique just always carries over to every single time. Yeah. Right? And just that nice little, he breaks contain. We got another guy to go knife him down.
Right? Also, yeah, that's where I noticed as I was watching this, like, 17 did a good job in trail position and knowing how to fit. He didn't necessarily get directly behind somebody else. He's always looking for grass.
I always think of a punt unit, I always think of, like, do you remember the old movie Spaceballs where they're combing the desert? Yeah. Like, they just got to spread out the comb, right? They got to stack the cups. They got to be spread out where they're 5 yards and making a big net, because that's a good fish they got at the end of it, man. We want to for sure catch that fish.
Hey, that makes me want to go watch Spaceballs this weekend. Oh, that's great. I did have a question based off this film, though. How much, because I saw it once this year, how much 2 returner stuff are you guys starting to see?
I think 2 returner is going to pretty soon be the name of the game back there. If you got more athletes you can trust, and the whole game of football is get the ball to your better players. If you got 2 incredibly dynamic guys back there, it can change the game. Better chances of having a superior athlete out there to go make a play, or just another guy who can go cover anywhere on the field, and kind of eliminates the directional advantage of a punt, because this one guy back here doesn't have to completely cover all 53 1/3 yards of the field. He has to cover 26.
Yeah. Well, I was talking, because we saw it once this year, and I was talking to one of our assistants the other day about it, because he asked me how many times we saw it. As I was like, off the top of my head, I think once. Just glossing. I think we may have seen it, like, briefly in film for somebody else once too. Because we were talking about it, how we usually saw it. Like, he talked about how he's seen it predominantly because he's coached a lot longer than me and has forgot more football than I know. But he's talking about the kind of advantages of it and how it's very good, especially on turf, for a lot that helps in case bad hops and stuff like that.
Yeah, the ball is pretty much almost like a tennis ball or racquetball once it hits turf, and it's going anywhere. And, but yeah, I mean, it's maybe not where it is yet, but it does give some good advantages. I think where it does open things up, though, is for the fake opportunities to start coming back a little more.
Yeah.
And not every team will do the 2 returner scheme the same. Some of them will use one guy as like a point guy or a short punt, a shank guy.
Yeah.
The other one will use it as two completely independent guys. And then some will use them as like a paired, almost like kick return type set where one's the lead then and the other one gets it with you and me calls and stuff. So, but if you have two guys back there, then you only got 9 and we have 10 in protection. Yeah. We have a math advantage right there then too for a direct snap or for some sort of leverage kick play.
Yeah. No, I get you. I was just curious because I saw that and it made me think of a conversation we had the other day. Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome. But yeah, I mean, just 2 short clips. I mean, I saw, hey, show a little something to you. But yeah. I love punt unit. I think it's a great thing, and I don't think there's too many better things than in the game of football than scoring a bunch of points or anything like that. But then that gives all the defensive guys nightmares because.
Hey, I'm with you, Coach, and like as I told a couple of the guys I've had on, punt's kind of been our like. I don't want to say struggle unit, but the physical act of punting has at times been our struggle over the past 2 years. Like our snapping's pretty solid. Like I said, I've invested a lot of time on there. Protection's gotten better. Our coverage took a little bit of a step back this year compared to the year before, but I think we kind of got some stuff figured out as the year went on. And but that's one thing I'm focusing on is how to better develop our punters, put them in a position to succeed in terms of their kicking abilities, and finding and not to say better, but finding people with who will excel at that position a little bit better. So, coaches, we appreciate Coach coming on. His contact information is on the screen. If you were just listening to the audio version on this through Anchor, Spotify, or whatever means you're listening to this, because I have like 18 different versions of you can see this. Coach's contact information will be in the bio. He's got his I'll put his email and his Twitter in there. Coach, I'll also put again his offensive video for our channel on there if you want to take a look at that and maybe ask him some questions on offense too, because like I said, Coach is an offense coordinator as well. He's got a vast wide range of experience as both a special teams guy and an offensive guy. So is there anything else you want to chit chat before we go? Like I said, I got all the time in the world, Coach, and like I said, I'm not pressed.
I'll leave a couple little nuggets left for punting. Because you say I want to help you out too, Coach, and I appreciate this platform. And yeah, I definitely encourage anybody to reach out because we're an open book here. I mean, people know a lot about our program and a lot about what we do, and I feel our big things. We want to keep doing things at an elite level, and if we can keep advancing the game of football, because the other thing, I'm also our women's flag football coach too, so I'm helping advance the game in a different way by having more people play football at the college level. But as far as punting, I would say one of the big things that I really believed in is having the understanding of where we actually want to punt on our foot. A lot of people think, hey, you want to go toe or all the way side of your foot. The easiest thing to always think of is right where the laces of your foot are, and that hardest part of the top of your foot is right where we want to get it. Okay. So if you can always set the table, as I say it, right even with where your hip is and use 2 hands there, and then just open up nice and easy, right? Yeah. And then having the thumb right on top of the ball, because as we lower it, it stays. But if we see our thumb be across the ball like this, as we lower it, what does the ball naturally do? It turns. So you're hitting like a spinning object with your foot, which always is a little tougher.
Okay. No, that's good. I like that thumb nugget right there.
Yeah. Biomechanics. As I said, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to that stuff.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, Coach. I mean, that typically us special team coaches are again, as I said, I think off air or when I was talking long snappers are a little different. I mean, we're all a little nerdy or into something specific, and it's a good little time to have. Like my guest on my second episode is like a gigantic like cook on the side. Like I mean, he's deep into it. He posts stuff on Facebook all the time, and I was like, that looks amazing. Like. That's his little nerd section is just food and how to make it.
Well, I still eat like I'm a college snapper who's trying to gain weight. So
that's not a good life choice, Coach.
No, I keep working out, try to do it every day. But yeah, I definitely, if anybody wants to reach out, I definitely encourage it. And I appreciate your time, Coach. And yeah, just those extra little things, everything's a full body movement, eyes, hands, feet. And then of course, as we talk about that, head and the heart got to be in the right spot too.
Oh yeah, it does, Coach. And again, I thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. again, coaches, if you want to reach out to Coach, his information's on the screen and in the bio. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Kick and Cover podcast.